Hello Stampers! Today I want to share with you a technique that I first saw another demonstrator do. Her name is Marie Jose Trudel, and I saw her do this technique and gave it a try and loved it, so I want to share it with you. What we're going to need is a texture plate. I'm using the Flourish texture plate. I'm also using a piece of Whisper white cardstock. This piece is 5 1/4 by 4 inches, and a candle. You can use a thick candle, a thin candle, whatever candle you've got, because we're going to be rubbing with the candle, doing some resist technique. So we're going to put our cardstock down on the Textured Impressions plate, and then holding it in place, or you could adhere it in place if you wanted to, but holding it in place, I'm just going to take my candle and I'm actually going to burnish. I'm going to rub up and down against the Textured Impressions plate. And what this is doing, although you can't see it very well, is it's actually burnishing. It's almost like doing a rubbing. Some of us are familiar with doing rubbings when we're kids. This is almost like doing a rubbing against the plate, and wherever the wax is sticking, it's going to create a resist for the ink we're going to put on it. So you can go a little bit in a diagonal direction as well if you want to catch some of the additional edges. But I'm feeling pretty good about that, so just going to move the plate aside, and now I have my resist piece, and now we're going to sponge it with a bunch of different colors. So I'm going to be using some pinks, so I'm going to grab some sponges, and I'm going to grab my pink pirouette first, and I'm going to start with my lightest color, and I'm going to ink up my sponge and then just start inking on the piece of cardstock. And this is really light. Looks like I might have had another color on there that I didn't realize, but that is just fine. And so I'm starting with the lightest color, pink, and doing some sponging, and then we're going to come in here in a moment with a bit of a darker colored pink. And so let's set that aside and let's come in with some Pretty in Pink. Do that off here on this scrap paper first, and now we're coming in with Pretty in Pink. And you can start to see, hopefully, that pattern starting to show. So I'm going to grab my Rose Red, and I happen to have a Rose Red sponge that hasn't been in other ink, and I'm going to come in here and ink with my Rose Red, and there you can really see this starting to pop. And you're just going to keep adding color until you get a look that you like. And I'm actually kind of liking, I think that must have had some kind of elegant eggplant or a kind of purple on it, and I'm actually liking how that looks. So I may change direction a little bit and add a purpley color, maybe some Perfect Plum first, just to see, make sure it doesn't come in too dark. So let's add a little Perfect Plum. Oh yeah, I like that. Okay. So that's looking really pretty. I think I want to add a little bit more color, a little bit more vibrant color. So I'm thinking Melon Mambo might do the trick. And let's add some bright color with that Melon Mambo. Oh, looking really pretty. Okay. So I'm pretty satisfied with how that looks. I am going to ink my edges a bit with Melon Mambo. Now what we're going to do, I have here off camera, let me show you on camera, an iron. And I also have a little ironing board. Let me see if I can move this into, the work surface so that we can do this together. So I have an ironing board, I've got a piece of scrap paper, and then I have my sheet. And I'm just heating up my iron a little bit. It doesn't need to be super hot. I'm just going to fold my sheet of scrap paper, and all we're going to do is take our scrap paper and put it on top of our waxed and sponged piece of cardstock. And while we're doing this, we're actually going to pull the wax off of this piece of cardstock with the heat from the iron. So all you need to do is just iron the piece of cardstock with the scrap paper, and this pulls the wax right onto the scrap piece of paper. So you get this look, and then your piece of cardstock is now smooth and you can stamp on it and it won't resist anymore. So let's see, what direction do I want it? I think that direction looks quite pretty. So we're going to leave it in that direction, and I am going to grab a heart stamp, and I'm using the I Heart Hearts stamp set, and I'm going to take this big thick plain heart and an acrylic block and pick up that heart, and I'm trying to think what color I want to stamp that heart in. Since we've already used Melon Mambo, maybe I'm actually going to go with Rich Razzleberry. That might be fun. So we're going to make our heart a little Rich Razzleberry, so I'm just going to ink that up. And actually for this stamp I want to make sure I get ink in the center and give that some nice pressure and lift up. So now we don't have any area where that ink has been resisted. Now what I want to do is grab my calendar, alphabet, and number stamp set, and I like to keep them in a little bit of a tray so that I can see all the letters and don't have to go hunting for them. And there's a little inspirational saying that I came up with that I want to place on this card. So I'm just going to grab some basic black and going to go ahead and stamp the greeting. So let's grab the letters, and we're just going to stamp these one by one. You can lay these out however you want. That is up to you. That's the beauty of these cards, and I love how they look almost woodcut. So I'm going to just keep stamping until I get my sentiment, my inspirational quote placed on here. Okay, so I have my entire sentiment stamped now. Commit yourself to the work of your heart. And I am going to make this into a card. So we're going to take a piece of So Saffron cardstock, and I'm just going to use some Tombow Mono multi-adhesive to add a little bit of glue to this layer. I found that I've started using my glue a lot more than I use the double-sided tape. I find that this sticks really well and lasts over time. It's also incredibly economical. So we're just going to center that and place that on the card. And now the only last thing to do, if you would like, is to stamp, hand stamped on the back. And there you have it. A really, really fun technique using wax and a resist technique to create a really unique background that looks a bit like a woodcut. And I did want to show you just a couple other cards that I did using this same technique. This one, and again, this is the exact same texture plate that I use, that Flourishes texture plate, and I just used different colors, crumb cake and soft suede, chocolate chip, and did my stamping using early espresso and the tree and leaves from Season of Friendship. And this one is a little bit different. I used a different texture plate for this one. Actually, I take that back. I used the exact same texture plate. I just used the reverse side. So on the reverse side of the Flourish texture plate is this damask texture, and I used that to create this card and did some stamping, more rainbow sponging I should say, and then stamped using the Just Believe stamp set and the Thank You Kindly stamp set, and the butterfly came from Dreams du Jour. I hope you've enjoyed this technique, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon here in the craft room.